I messaged you about this the other day. I remember in 2017 or 18, either you did an interview or there was an article talking about managing a business with in a hyper volatile market, and we're now in a bear market, and we've seen some companies struggle or some individuals struggling. I thought it would be a good time to get you on and talk about your experience with Ledger and what other people can learn from that. Because if you want to build a business in Bitcoin or even crypto, you have to deal with these volatile markets, and it can be quite challenging. So how'd you do it, man?
No, definitely. And, it's not the first time that it happens, actually. I think for internet in the early years, it was probably the same where, when you try to build a company, usually you always have the same factors, like you have competition, et cetera, et cetera. But, in my previous company, typically we're building in advertising. And so we could count on the advertising market. I mean, it was there, and you would take a percentage, maybe you would take 1%, maybe 3%, you could aim at 5 or 10, but it was something that was there and sort of growing. And with Bitcoin, what's different is the other unknown factor when you grow your business is the size of the market. Like, you never know. And the size of the market today, the size of the market tomorrow, they vary a lot, from 3 trillions, I think it was, to 1, and so maybe to 10 the next day, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a problem for everyone in the industry. It's even more of a problem for Ledger because we're in hardware. And so the problem with hardware is you don't build the hardware overnight. And so if when the market collapses, let's say the people stop buying your product, it doesn't change anything to your hardware planning in a way, because you plan hardware the way that we plan hardware, we're already thinking about 2025 and 2026. You're not really planning for the next quarter, you're planning for the next years to come, because innovation in hardware, because let's say you want to have your Ledger technology inside every phone in the future, that's something that you plan now for release in maybe 26 or 27. And so there is a difficulty in handling a hardware company in the business that goes up and down, just because you need to have partners, you need to guarantee supply, etc. And if the demand is very volatile, then it's very difficult. So that's really the hard part in crypto in general, and specifically for Ledger in this market. But I have to say that in this bear market, the things are vastly different. And so in the previous bear market, you were mentioning 18, 19, I think 2 things have happened. The demand really dropped overnight. People were like, okay, we're not interested anymore. So they didn't buy our products. And also we fucked it up ourselves because we were trying to launch the Nano X, and, we missed the launch in January, and then we launched in May, etc. So that was really hard on the company, but it was both the market and us doing it to ourselves as well. In this bear market, I think first we were much better prepared, and the product is better. We have the stock, et cetera, et cetera. We are in market, we're pushing the product, and we know what we're doing. Versus in 18, we didn't really know what we were doing, to be honest. So Ledger is better, and also the market didn't collapse, meaning that the price of Bitcoin isn't everything anymore. There are many other projects happening everywhere. On other things, I know it's not Bitcoin, this is the Bitcoin show, but NFT, it's a big trend, and NFT communities are still sort of booming everywhere, and people, if they want to be part of a community, we're launching with Brick, they're going to do their first drop on Ledger Market in 2 weeks. This is a great community in LA, it's around, music, events, etc. If you want to be part of that community, you need to get the NFT. And so that's not stopping. And so as a result, we've seen year on year, better demand in H1 this year than in H1 last year.
Right.
Higher demand, 2 digits too, between 15 and 50% depending on the months.
What were the key things happened in 2018, 2019, which helped you prepare for this? Because I remember reading one of the main issues with the logistics around, you're building a device, you actually have to supply a product. And so the logistics around supply chains and managing those through a volatile market was the biggest challenge you faced. What was the biggest lesson you took from that to how you plan your business now?
So you're correct. I mean, the supply chain is very difficult to manage. One of the lessons were that we need to have a more robust supply chain in terms of the choices of the partners. Who you work with in hardware is everything. And like in every market, like you got the A list, and then you got everybody else. And so in this market, Foxconn is who you want to work with. Flextronics. There are big guys out there that can help you build hardware at scale. That are the one that you need to work to. And so for us, it was a big wake up call to go from amateur hour, or we're the little guys in the garage, to okay, well, now how do the big boys do it, etc. So what we've done is we scaled our hardware organization. We brought advisors, we brought people, etc., of people that have been there, done that. And so there are a bunch of people that work at Ledger now that were at Apple before. And so, because again, why not recruit from the best? Apple is the best hardware company in the world right now, has been for the past, 20 years maybe, at least 15 or 10 for sure. And so most of our advisors actually come from Apple. Most of the guys that are now running hardware at Ledger come from Apple, etc. And so you recruit the best. They build the best partnerships, and this was the lessons. Like, okay, so because at some point, either you go big or you go home. That sentence is very true, and so we decided to go big.
You went big, okay. It must be difficult though managing the supply chain in terms of stock. So I know obviously everything's a derivative of Bitcoin. My show downloads are a derivative of Bitcoin. I'm sure supply, even though it's kept during the bear market, there are certain periods where you've got peak demand. How do you manage that in terms of stock? Do you have to have a very flexible, almost like a flexible load? I'm thinking almost like the conversations I've had recently with the energy companies. Do you have to have a flexible load that allows you to deal with massive changes in demand?
Yeah, you do. So what you do with stock is a big issue, because of just the simple supply and demand issue. Like, you need to have stock to just ship the products, but also from a cash perspective, because stock is cash. If you build stocks that are too big and you don't sell your products, then you've extended yourself with your cash. And you can sort of die in good health, because it's completely different. Like the way that you run the company and the money that you put towards your stock, like, are two different things. I mean, Ledger could do very well in terms of a business, but if we invest 200 million in stock, then we have no money on the bank account, and you can understand very easily that we die quickly. So in a volatile market, I have to say it's not really science, it's art, because nobody does what we do in hardware in general. Like people have, again, better ways of projecting the business. And there are a better way of projecting the business, because usually they deliver like a watch or like a product that exists in the market. But don't get me wrong, though, most hardware companies die. Hardware companies actually die very frequently. People and hardware business is very difficult. When you go raise money to VCs and saying you're in hardware, usually it's the black mark of this business. It's like, oh, you're in hardware, that's great. And then this is the door, and see you later. So hardware businesses are very hard in general, and hardware business in crypto are even harder. And this is why you see that you don't have many companies actually doing it. You have a lot of companies that are subscale, and I'm saying it because it's true. I'm not trying to brag that Ledger is the best or whatever, but it's true that if you look at most of the hardware companies in the business, they're really subscale. And why? Because it's very hard to scale. How do you ship your product? How do you build an e-commerce platform? How do you build this supply chain that can, where you can build millions of devices? Because there's one thing to do, 10,000s of devices. There's one thing to do 1 million devices, but there's another game to do 10 million or 100 million. And so the problem is, if you're trying to build a real consumer business, my game is, how do I go from 2 to 3 million devices a year to 30 million devices a year? That's why that's what I'm trying to do and getting the company ready for. And so that's 30 million a year is very different from 3. But there are stages. And so we discussed what was bad, but I can tell you what's good too. What's good with what was good with the crypto market for Ledger is actually it took time. And so, some people say, people think that in business you need to go fast. But, for security, actually, you need sort of to go slower, because you can't be wrong. You have to be almost close to 100% right all the time. And so the fact that the market didn't grow so fast, from 14 to 17 was actually really good time to do R&D. And during those years at Ledger, we never, the question was always is this even relevant? We didn't know. We almost killed, doing hardware wallets, every year at every board meeting, it was like, should we still do a hardware wallet, or should we move on to do something different? But that time was actually a gift, because we had time to do R&D, etc. So it's stressful when you do it, because like, oh, do we have a business? But when we kicked off in 2017, we had the Nano S. It was a very solid product. It had been battle tested quietly during all these months, let's say, or years, because the Nano S was a result of many R&D projects that we did before. And then the Nano X, was an evolution of the Nano S, but all of this was, very strong, battle tested, etc. Which is why you have 5 million devices in the wild right now, and Ledger has never been hacked. And so the fact that the market is slow and sometimes slows down, for us, it's actually good, because then we can go back into product mode, R&D, develop something, etc. If the market moves too fast, security doesn't really have time to catch up, and then it becomes a problem.
I'm still using my Nano S I bought, I think it was early 2017.
Correct.
I still have that device, and I still use that one.
Yeah.
It's stood the test of time.
I mean, if you're Bitcoin only, you don't need anything else but a Nano S.
Well, I do actually, because I multi-sig now, so I have to have a range of to de-risk. But so do you have additional complications that you have to think about with regards to security that other hardware companies don't? In that, I know other hardware companies can be face issues of hacking or hackers, but you also have to think about the man in the middle attacks within the supply chain. So you have a whole bunch of other stuff you have to think about.
In terms of securing our supply chain, you mean?
Yeah. Well, you just have to secure the device, the supply chain. There's so many additional things you have to secure.
Yes, but the way that we design our security scheme is like we don't need to worry about things as much as the other, because the way that we design our secure element, the way that our operating system is put into it, etc., only us control that. And so in reality, we can build our devices anywhere in the world. So we don't have supply chain attacks the way that other manufacturers could have. Because it's true that if you put your hands on other type of devices, you could just build fake devices or put like a backdoor into them, fairly easily, which is not the case with Ledger. And we say it, but we can also actually prove it. As soon as you connect your Ledger, you can do a genuine check, etc. So to make sure that the device hasn't been tampered with. So this is a fundamental difference actually between us and some of the other players in the industry. We can build at scale because we can build anywhere in the world, where other players have to keep a really tight control over the supply chain because of those type of attacks, like the supply chain attacks where you could inject something wrong in the device. Like we don't have that problem, which is why we can manufacture in Vietnam, in China, in Poland, in Mexico, wherever we want to manufacture. And actually, if you think about long term, because this is possible, then it becomes scalable. If it was not possible, it's not scalable, and then you can never do mass market. Because the thing is, as soon as you have, what we do in crypto is we have customers everywhere in the world day one. And for us, it's very natural, but for any other business in the world, it never happens like that. We've shipped one product in every country in the world, at least one product in every country in the world, every country in the world. And so if you think about any other business, that's not true. Nobody does that. And we shipped ourselves. We didn't have a third party shipping for us or some distributor in Kazakhstan or whatever. No, we ship directly into. And so that's uncommon. And that's very difficult. And that's something that usually e-commerce companies don't do. But we have to do it because it's crypto and because everyone is doing Bitcoin everywhere in the world.
And so with everything you learned from 2017, 18, 19, and I guess a lot of your time was on the kind of day-to-day logistics and operations, the company's now at a stage where you're actually thinking multiple years ahead and you're planning for, did you just say 30 million devices?
Yes, tens of millions, yes.
So you have to kind of project where you think the market is going over the next few years to build into that. And I guess that even also comes with some risk itself. If you predict 30 million and the market's 20 million.
No, but 30 million is just an order of magnitude.
Yes.
It's just I know that I need to have some kind of optionality to go. And so the optionality is the kind of partnerships that you have. That if you do a partnership with a manufacturer that can only build 2 million a year, but okay, so your optionality is 2 million. If you do a partnership with a manufacturer that can build hundreds of millions of devices a year, like Foxconn, then you have bigger optionality. So I'm just trying to build my business so I have the optionalities, and then we'll see what the result is. And also, maybe it's 30, but maybe it's 100, or maybe it's billions of devices.